Welcome to this week's episode of Blue is the New White. I think you guys are really going to enjoy the conversation today that I just had with Doug Donovan, the CEO of Interplay Learning. Interplay focuses on online training for skilled trades utilizing virtual reality and 3D simulations. This is something that I know that a lot of people out there have been begging for because we're trying so hard to get the youth of the nation and the youth of the world interested in the skilled trades, and Interplay is going to be a huge, huge part of that. Doug is a very, very intriguing guy, very intelligent and very driven and motivated, and you'll see by this podcast exactly what I mean. But he started off in finance, and once he realized he didn't really want a future in finance, he switched over to be a part of the software world because he just loved creating things. So much so that after his first stint in the software world, he opened up Echo Mountain Ski Resort, which is remarkable. And then he got into training energy auditors, which eventually led him to be the CEO of Interplay Learning, where he focused his time and efforts on creating these simulations and virtual reality for skilled trades, specifically HVAC, electrical, and the like. So this is a very, very intriguing episode, very interesting, and it's clear that even though Doug doesn't work directly in the skilled trades, being skilled trades adjacent and serving the trades in a way that hasn't been served before is definitely going to prove very, very valuable for this industry moving forward and for closing this skilled trades gap. So, as always, this show is not monetized. We don't run ads. We rely specifically on word of mouth from our valuable listeners to spread the word about the show. So if you wouldn't mind taking a minute after the episode, if you liked it, if you found value in it, please rate us, give us a review, share the episode, share the podcast, let people know who we are and why we exist. That being said, enjoy this week's episode of Blue is the New White with Mr. Doug Donovan. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Blue is the New White. Today we have an awesome guest for you, Mr. Doug Donovan from Interplay Learning. Doug, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience?
Hey, Josh. Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here. So I'm the CEO of a company called Interplay Learning, and we are a software company. We develop and deliver a solution for accelerated training for skilled trades technicians with a huge emphasis on HVAC techs, and I think that's why you invited me. The biggest differentiator, what we do that's special, is we use immersive learning and even virtual reality for technician training. And we've been doing this for a number of years, and we're getting pretty good at it. And yeah, it'd be fun to talk about it and just talk about training in general in the trades.
Awesome. Well, before I ask you about your story, can you explain immersive learning for those who don't know what that is?
Yeah, sure. So if I'm trapped in an elevator and we have 10 seconds, I just say, oh, we build video games. But instead of killing the bad guy, you're practicing a technical skill set. If I have a little longer elevator ride, I might talk a little bit about, point of view, simulation, a term that people are familiar with. People think of like aviation simulation and stuff like that. This is all software based, so it's on desktops and tablets, and as I mentioned, in virtual reality. But the point is to make the learner active, to mimic what in the field would look like. And that's what we set out to do. So you want to immerse yourself in what would be like a field environment. It's very possible on a 2D screen, but VR is a whole nother level. You are truly immersed. So that's how we describe immersive learning.
Words cannot describe how excited I am to talk to you today about this stuff. As my audience knows, I'm a big advocate for getting young people into the skilled trades, and I think that your platform is going to be pivotal in doing that. So why don't you, and start wherever you want, but I want to know who you are, Doug, and I want to know where you come from and how you got here.
Yeah, I wish the story was linear and looked very intention driven, and but I've been an entrepreneur for the term now. What they say, a serial entrepreneur. Really, since since I left, I started in New York City in the 90s as a hard charger type A. That's what you were told to do, go to New York and be in finance. And so I lived in that world for 3 years, and I thought, this is this is not what I want. I ended up out on the West Coast in San Francisco and did a .com during the whole .com boom, and got some stories about that. Some of the craziness that I see today in these companies kind of reminds me of those eras. So we built a software company back there, back then, 99 to 2002, went to business school, and ended up, and again, this is where it will tell you, there isn't as much purpose as you think, but I ended up chasing an idea of building a ski area. So I actually built a small ski area outside of Denver. It's called Echo Mountain, and it's still there. We sold it in 2012. And so it's been, for me, it's been all about building businesses. So I built the .com. We built the ski area. I went and built another small little software company, and then ended up in San Diego with another small company that I joined. And one of the things we were doing was training. We were training energy auditors. This was during, if you recall back, the stimulus era of Obama, coming out of the recession of 2010, 11, and one of the, or I guess 8, 9. And one of the things that we did was train energy auditors. And it became apparent, and how I ended up in the training world was being part of that program and seeing how, frankly, as hard as these folks worked, and they'd often pass the national certification to be energy auditors, they just did not get in the field enough and have a lot of opportunities to practice their trade. And so that planted the seed for Interplay Learning. And this was back in 2000, end of 2010.
Wow.
So as promised, it wasn't, it doesn't, you jump from finance to .com to ski area naturally, and squeeze a little business school in there. And here I am in the simulation training world. So, sometimes fate is stronger than intention.
Well, I like the way you put that. But you know what? I mean, I still think that that's an incredible story because, as you know, these days entrepreneurship is kind of on this pedestal. That's the American dream for many, and having lived that, it sounds like basically your entire life doing different things. I think that this conversation is probably going to relate to a lot of people and intrigue a lot of people. Um, that being said, your industry is what I like to call trades adjacent, because the trades typically, they serve a lot of people. I talk a lot about that. They serve a lot of people around the country, around the planet, and there's very few industries that are able to serve the trades in a way that they need to be served. And I see your company as one of those. I work with a lot of software companies, that have a similar mindset, and it's always intriguing to me when I find somebody, who works alongside the trades in a specific trade, to help that industry move forward. So, but before we get into all of that, the question I like to ask everybody is, if you think back to high school, your days in high school, I'm curious what your perception of the skilled trades was back then, and if you ever thought that you'd be a part of it.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the short answer is definitely not. I mean, I grew up in a suburb of Boston, I would say affluent suburb of Boston, and there's no question the whole town and school system was focused on 4-year degree, right? You're going to go to college, and especially in New England, right? New England, obviously, a spot of a lot of high profile colleges, right, with the Ivy League sort of surrounding you. And so I remember specifically the high school had a metric that they measured themselves on, which was the percent of graduates who went on to 4-year institutions. And so you can imagine, if that's your KPI, right? If that's a metric your whole department's focused on, your whole, the superintendent's focused on in the school system. I mean, trades was not even entertained as a possible solution for a path going forward. And I look back to some of my classmates. I think at about 160 total in my class, and a number actually came from trades backgrounds, right? They might, because it's a small town, so, and it's pretty vertical, meaning people live in the community and work in the community. So you had the electrician's son also in your class, right? It wasn't just there's people going into Boston high finance, but you also had those folks. But nobody really talked about it. And looking back, it really just talked about how do you get into a 4-year institution. So it's interesting now, 20 plus years later, looking back and thinking about that, and for us, and for me in the last 10 years, just learning more about the trades, right? Coming in from a completely different angle, and the appreciation that I've gotten now at this point, it's really, now I feel very proud to be a part of what we're doing here, really contributing to it. But I don't have a story where it says, oh, I grew up around this and that's why. I mean, I came to it late, and I understand why now, given the focus in the 80s and the 90s was, 4-year institution all the time. And so it's nice to see the dialogue change in the last few years. Even since we started this, we've seen a shift for sure, that a real national conversation about good careers. And we'll talk about interplay learning plenty, but we often say better careers means better lives. And so anytime we can help somebody gain skills, gain a career, advance in a career, we know it's leading to a better life. And we can hang our hat on that. We know these trades are offering that, where a lot of other jobs don't.
Yeah, that's very well put, and very interesting information. I've talked to a lot of different people on the show about their experiences in high schools, and how certain high schools, uh, rank themselves against other high schools, and college admittance being one of those KPIs. I don't know much about it, admittedly, but it's definitely something I'm hearing more and more. So it's always interesting to hear another guest talk about it. So would you say then that your opinion or your perception of the skilled trades has drastically changed between what you know now working adjacent to them, as opposed to what you were taught or not taught in high
Yeah,
school?
yeah, yeah. Just sort of, nobody was anti-trades, right? It
Sure.
was more just no focus on it. And so, yeah, my appreciation of it has changed dramatically. At one point, I had a cousin out of work, and I said, let's see if we can line up some money and go buy a couple HVAC firms or electrical firms, because they're great careers, they're good businesses. You can grow. We know, I'm sure you covered a ton, skills gap, and the opportunity here, right? The demand far outstrips our ability to deliver services, especially in high season in the HVAC world like today. So yeah, I've come full circle on it, and a big believer that these career paths, especially when I see people working in these gig jobs a lot, and I think, and now I'm sure pandemic, conversation aside, like these are real careers and real rewarding careers. And for a group of people with a skill set that lines up for that, it's a shame that they weren't given that opportunity or exposed to it more often and earlier. And again, I think that's changing. And I think, podcasts like this actually are a big help, right? Like you mentioned, not understanding what the high school's metrics are, but that'd be a really interesting, diving into that a little bit. And is there a new metric that we should promoting to high schools that say, there is another path?
Absolutely, and I'm in the process of trying to find somebody who can answer that question for me. So it's funny you brought that up, and I might be jumping ahead a little bit here, but I want to ask it since we're on the topic of high schools. But is there any are is interplay, has it been introduced into any high schools or CTE, career technical education schools out there? Is that a focus of yours, or?
It hasn't been, purely for focus reasons, right? A small company, less than 50 employees, you want to make sure you're doing whatever you're doing as well as you can do it. In 2021, absolutely a focus of ours. So um, we actually came from schools, and we actually built sims in a more of a professional services role. We're in the background, and some publishers sold them into schools, but we pulled ourselves out of that business to really serve the industry, serve the companies like yours, helping them train, and it's hard to do both well. And so we've really focused on that. 2021 in January, you'll hear from us for sure, because we'll have a pretty serious school initiative.
Oh, that's really cool. And like I said, I was just curious, and that makes a lot of sense. Especially with your entrepreneurial background, I'm sure you learned a thing or two about focus along the way. What that means for a business. So that's really encouraging, and I'm excited to see what happens next year and what kind of an impact you can make, because this I'm telling you right now is something that young people across the globe are going to want to get their hands on, and could prove to be um, the catalyst for quite a turning point, I think, in interest generated uh, for the skilled trades.
Yeah, well, we certainly think so. I mean, if you think about it, with the virtual reality component, you really have a trades program in a box, right?
Yeah.
Like, you just need some basic hardware. Now, we're quick to advocate that, of course, the hands-on time has to happen with the real equipment. We don't think virtual reality replaces that. It'll make it way more effective. It'll condense it. It'll give, it'll enhance it. But if you think of a high school that wants to add a trade survey program, right? Check out a number of trades. And currently we offer solar technician training, electrical training, plumbing training, HVAC training, facility maintenance training. Um, Imagine that. Boom, you pop that in there. You don't need a $2 million budget to build out a trades training center off your high school. You really just need an empty room, some Wi-Fi, and less than a few $1,000s worth of technical hardware, VR headsets and computers, and you have a trades program. So yeah, we're excited for 2021 for sure.
That is awesome, and we're growing mighty close to matrix style learning right there, as I like to say. Now the next step is you just need to manufacture some kind of a mouthpiece that hooks up to 9-volt batteries. So if you electrocute yourself in the software, you feel it. You
That's
know.
right. That's right. That's coming. Haptic feedback's real. Like, you can do that now. You get a little. We try not to shock people. There's actually a suit called a Tesla suit, unrelated to the Tesla company, uh, and it heats you up because they make it for soldiers, right? They heat you up. It can take shots as if you're getting shot. I mean, there's the real deal. I mean, that's all there for sure. I mean, we're gonna have people walking before they're running or sprinting in that direction. But yeah, certainly the sky's the limit.
That is so cool. This is one of the most intriguing conversations I've had already, and we've only been talking for like 10 minutes. Um, so I'm curious. You said you got into software development just after you decided that finance wasn't for you.
Mm-hmm.
So what led to that switch? I mean, what got you into software? Got you out of finance? How did that transition happen?
Yeah, so I mean, frankly, it felt a little bit like the gold rush in 99, right? There's all this action going on in the San Francisco area, Silicon Valley. I mean, really grew up in that era. And I'd been in New York and felt I liked the energy of New York and the action, and wanted a chance to live on the West Coast. And so I was attracted to that energy. I was attracted to the idea of just creating something new. And if I look back at my career and think, was there any consistency, it really comes back to like creating something new. Like, I love, I'm not good with my hands, so I can't build that table, or I can't build that, or fix that piece of equipment, but I do like creating. And I guess that was the attraction, right? The software, that was the beginning of the software is going to eat the world era. And people were just learning, right? This is remember, 95 was really when we started using the internet. But by 98, 99, you could sense like, holy, this is going to change our lives. And I wanted to be a part of that. So it was really the energy more than anything else. And obviously that energy was driven by software. And so met a gentleman who had an idea for a business, big idea guy, but didn't have a lot of finance background. And so I supported him as a co-founder, as doing more of the business acumen stuff and the financial statements and things like that. And he was out, thinking about, this is what we could do and why, and really was, crazy, a great entrepreneurial energy and smart. So I sort of tagged onto him and learned from him while I offered some services that I'd learned in New York. And so that's how we got into it.
Oh, very, very cool. Was it everything you thought it'd be getting into software?
Well, it was. I mean, understand, I entered at 99. The whole thing collapsed right in April of 2000. That was the big, dot-com bust. And we were well financed. We had a lot of venture money, and everybody stopped. Nobody would buy any software for a year, but we had plenty of capital in the bank. And so we just worked for a year, kind of pushing a stone up a hill. And you do that for a year and you realize like nothing's going to happen right away. And at that point, we decided, you know what, this is not going to work. Regardless of how good the software was, no one was buying software for a number of years there. And so I, at that point, decided to go to business school. So we ended up shutting that down, and I went off to business school. So you talk about learning as an entrepreneur. Most of my learning has been, on the downside, like where things didn't work.
That's real
Uh,
life, though. I mean, and I'm a big advocate for that too. Is fail often, fail fast, fail right, and the and my dad taught me a long time ago. He likes to say the only time that you truly fail is when you give up. Not when you lose a business, or not when you stumble, but as long as you take
right.
something away from that and you keep going with the same thing or something else, then you can't count it as a failure. It's just a learning experience.
Yeah, I mean that still influences me today for sure. The choices we make as a company are, sometimes like, well, we back in 2000 we spent a lot of money on lawyering these things, and ended up not really even needing that. So, all right, maybe we don't need to spend the money on the lawyers at this time until we're at the point where it's the right time to spend that money, or you name it. But there's a number of things along the way that we learned that I thought, geez, if I do it again, I would do it differently. And here I am with that opportunity. So definitely making, a huge influence on what we do as a company.
All things point to today. That is cool. So I'm curious. I think you said that in San Diego you were training energy auditors, and then was
That's
it
right.
was it after that you ended up getting into Interplay and doing this?
That's
So
exactly right. Yeah.
what made you focus Interplay on the mechanical, electrical, plumbing trades? What led to that?
Well, you can imagine, right, when you're with energy efficiency, and particularly around homes, what's the biggest consumer? The HVAC system, right? And so when you're teaching energy efficiency, and you probably, well, you certainly know about depressurization and the danger of combustion appliances inside of a home. You start tightening the home, the dangers of, is your back, you're going to get backdrafts from some of these combustion appliances. And so, yeah, you start running up into the trades immediately: water heaters, plumbing, HVAC systems, pressurization, etc. And so when we decided to actually leave that company, when we saw that opportunity that said, geez, um, these energy auditors don't get to go into 75 houses, right? The math didn't work. If you're going to pay whatever it was, $1,000 for a training class, we didn't have time to take people to 60 different houses, right? We trained essentially the hands-on in one house, and they tested in that same house. So they really needed an opportunity to practice the trade a lot more. And so that's where we came up with the idea of using simulation to get those repetitions. When we did that, and when I say we, I have a co-founder at the time. He's not with the company operationally anymore. But what we found when we looked around was nobody's used in simulation in the trades. And we saw, aviation had been using it extensively for decades. Military had been using it for soldier training, all kinds of emergency training type thing. Medical surgeons have been using simulation, and it was all about building repetitions and on procedures with lots of variables. And so it lined up really well. The technology capabilities really lined up with the needs on the training side of tradespeople. So we were pleasantly surprised in 2010 when we looked around and said, geez, nobody's doing it. And so that opportunity, sort of presented itself. And it makes sense, right? Like there was the industries I named where they were doing it, very well capitalized, and lives were at stake with almost unlimited budgets, right? If the Department of Defense says we need a simulation to save soldiers' lives, they get the budget for it. But who is going to do that in the HVAC industry, right? Who is going to cut that first $2 million check to build the simulation? And so it made sense that now, especially looking back, why what didn't exist. What happened was development costs were coming down and computer capabilities were going up. So you no longer needed some massive computer to run simulation, and you could deliver it, globally overnight with with broadband really growing at the time. So there was, the timing was right, and the trades were one. I don't think we quite appreciated the skills gap at that time when we went in. We just thought we had a good technology application for a problem we knew existed a little bit. It was years later when we really appreciated, geez, this skills gap is severe and acute, and it's going to take companies like ours to help solve it, because it's not going to solve it through its traditional, training means.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. I mean, just that you had the initial foresight to see that that was an absolute need in this industry. Because admittedly, I mean, I got into the skilled trades, I think it was 2007, 2008. So, I'm still I say relatively new to the trades. I was in the field for a long time. I was in the field for like 7 years, and then, stepped into the back office and started running the company a little bit more. Um, but I remember thinking to myself when I first got in, and I was learning, and my specialty in the trades is hot side. I don't know much about HVAC and refrigeration. I've got a team that handles that. I've got
Uh-huh.
brighter minds than I, with that handle that aspect of the business. But I was brought up learning how to repair hot side restaurant equipment, and one of the thoughts I had is, why isn't there? Not only is there not a school for this, there's almost no literature on it
Yeah.
aside from the manufacturers themselves. You know, and it was a few years later, I think I was like, man, I wish somebody would invent some sort of a VR platform or something. And
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
little unbeknownst to me, you're over there in San Diego, working away
Starting
at
out.
it.
Yeah, that's right.
That's really
Our
wild.
our original tagline was something like training as you imagined it,
Ah,
because we found along the way the people who were paying attention had conversations, right? They had seen gaming and said, geez, this would be, maybe they used a Sony PlayStation VR system or something and said, geez, this would be amazing. Instead of, hitting the racquetball, I would actually be, using a tool. And so, we recognized we weren't sort of the first to think of it, but, by a far stretch, we just started, frankly, just executing on it.
that's fantastic. So if you could pinpoint the goal, the absolute goal behind Interplay, how would you describe that?
Well, I mentioned it earlier, right? Better careers means better lives, and that's a mission we take very seriously. And it's, goes back to the company ethos and what we do. And so when I think about the hands-on careers, and the naming mechanisms or conventions are hard, right? You use the new white, new blue collar, right? Is it blue collar? Is it middle skills? Is it, it's always sort of tricky around there. Sometimes it's skilled trades. I like to think of hands-on workers, right? Because we think of knowledge workers, any hands-on worker. I think there's a real opportunity to deliver an on-demand catalog of learning, kind of similar to like a LinkedIn Learning, if you're familiar with that, where it's, that's set up for the knowledge worker, right? You can learn coding skills and business skills and make better PowerPoints and whatever it is, but where's that massive trusted resource of good technical training for that hands-on worker, electrical, mechanical, industrial? I mean, the big vision for us is you build something on that people know where to go when it comes to advancing skills, or know where to go when it comes to on-ramping into a career, and leveraging that immersive learning to make it job relevant immediately, right? This learner they want to be touching something, they want to be doing something. We don't want to read about maybe the proof that proves Ohm's law. Maybe we don't need to lead with that like schools do. So yeah, the big vision is trying to deliver something that really makes a difference for getting people into careers and advancing careers around, or all around these industries. Not just the skilled trades, but you can go into med tech and, ag tech and, diesel engine repair, right down the line. But it's really, to me, it's about the hands-on worker.
Yeah, well said. I think that is fantastic, and I think the impact that we're going to see from this in years to come is going to be astronomical. So I'm curious how, in your experience now, working, I'm sure, with a lot of skilled trades companies across the country, how are they implementing it into their operation to realize, an ROI from uh, those that they train?
Sure, yeah. So we see it used in a number of different ways, and we sell, yeah, into the service companies. We also sell into the big manufacturers who help, bring it down to their group of authorized dealers, et cetera. And we also get the aspiring technicians or career switchers also buying it. So we're sort of at three levels. But coming back to the service companies, which is by far our primary go to market, and frankly, any way you cut it, regardless of how you come, they're always the user, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how you get there. And we've seen it in a number of ways. Number one, a lot of companies identified something, and we've seen this even in the last 2 years. There's been a company, maybe like yours, where you said the skills gap's real, it's painful, but we're doing okay. Until the last 2 years when they said nobody's going to solve it for me except me. And so they're taking that build your own workforce mindset. And that's when they find us, right? When they're like, well, if I'm going to build my own workforce, I'm going to need a reliable training program because, frankly, when I tried to do it on my own, it didn't quite work, right? You take somebody unskilled, you put them with a couple folks, and 3 months later, it's not really working out because they weren't really properly trained. There was no system of learning, and it didn't work. So we find them starting to say, look, I need a foundational training program that I can rely on, that's efficient, that allows me to get my folks into the field quickly. So I start there because it's broadened their ability to attract talent. So they no longer need to go try to steal a skilled technician. They can hire for attitude and use our system to train for aptitude. And so it starts at that point. So there's immediate ROI in that, they can attract talent and broaden their candidate pool, which I think has helped in recruiting for them. And as you know, recruiting is a big challenge, right? Finding the bodies and finding bodies. And then the next challenge is getting them skilled. And when we built our content, we'll stay focused on HVAC. Given this audience, we went to companies. We built an advisory board, and we said, "What's the most important thing that new techs need to know in the first 3 months? What's the most important thing that they need to know from 3 months to 9 months?" Right? We really wanted to not build it like a classic school, like a curriculum that said, like, "Oh, let's do the theory, and let's get them job ready as quickly as we can." They make them understand safety and some basics, and whether it's basic tools like, hey, go grab me the crescent wrench, right? They better know what the crescent wrench is, or meet me at the outdoor unit, right? They better not walk back to the truck. They better know what that means. So we really tried to make it job relevant from the get-go. And so we're seeing a lot of companies now using it as that onboarding training, and they're using it as career laddering marks too. And I know you've talked about that in the past, where they actually have per hour rates based on what they've done on our platform, showing, geez, I've got command of the basics now, and now I'm moving into the intermediate content. So we're seeing ROI there for them. It's been nice for us to watch some of the more seasoned folks, the 3 year plus techs, also getting in there, particularly in the simulations. And we see it for two reasons. And I'm always pleasantly surprised when I talk to a seasoned tech and they say, "Oh, yeah, I'm using the sim." And I say, "Look, Bob, you're a 20-year tech. Why are you using our simulations?" And they'll say, "Well, you have scenarios in there I haven't seen in 15 years. I haven't seen a faulty thermistor or misaligned thermistor, and you have that in there. And so it's fun for me to practice my trade." And sometimes we forget that. Like, you can't call your friend, your cousin, and say, "Hey, can I come over and blow your compressor because I want to practice?" And the virtual environment lets you do that. Not to mention, even the seasoned folks, you find everybody has holes in their understanding. So going back and reviewing some of the basic, whether it's the fundamentals of refrigeration or whatever it is. I mean, we're all battling that all the time. I mean, part of the reason I went to business school was like fill in a bunch of holes I knew I had in terms of business stuff. And I think we see that with the tradesmen as well. So you see ROI there in terms of just upskilling. If you could take a bunch of low level techs and make them mid level, you could take a bunch of mid level and make them a little better what they do. Diagnostic skills, they get a lot of practice in diagnostic skills. So as you know, you get on a service call, and if you're a parts changer, that's not going to help anybody. But if you get good at diagnostics, the power in terms of how, quickly you can identify the problem efficiently, and get on to the next job, yeah, there's immediate ROI. And we'll often say to people, look, if you do one more job a year, right? Because we're pretty low priced, like it more than pays for itself. So just in the efficiency and time on task is another place you see ROI.
Yeah. Plus, I think, one part that's not lost on me or my team, because as my team is using Interplay and, uh, and has been for a little while now, but it's fun. I mean, honestly, just simply put, it's fun. I mean, I find myself going on there just screwing around because it's a fun way to learn, and that thought process and mindset has really trickled down throughout my company. When I first implemented it, it was strictly for my PM crew because typically when we bring new technicians, apprentices in, they start in the PM department, then they
Right,
have a
right.
trajectory, they work their way through, they work their way up, and Interplay uh, is part of that curriculum. But since then, there's been other people, they talk amongst other techs and stuff like that, and there's been other people that come to me and say, "Hey, can I try that? I was
Yeah.
just talking to so and so, and it sounds really cool. I'd like to see what it looks like." And so even like the junior techs that I have that moved through the trajectory before Interplay was a part of it are now asking to backtrack
Revisit
and
it, sure.
not even that it's a requirement for them anymore because they're past that stage, but they physically just want to see it and they want to use it. So um,
Yeah.
and that's a testament to what you can do for the skilled trades moving forward, because generally the interest level, even when you're in the trades, if parts of the job are fun, sure, but not like when you're sitting at home playing video games, right?
Right,
Now you can
right.
sit at
Yeah.
work and play video games and actually learn something.
Yeah, 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 that's exactly right. And we do, you'll see in our marketing material, we'll often say training that training that techs will actually use,
Yeah.
right? Because there's been attempts before, and look, good for the companies who put out some HVAC training online, but it's been historically more like PDF books and called online training.
Yep.
And that's not the we this does that doesn't work for this audience. It doesn't work. A completely different approach. Even our video-based training, we do plenty of that alongside the Sims, is dynamic in nature and in short bursts, because we know who we all have short attention spans these days, and a lot of quick quizzing and dynamic. And so even when you're doing something that's not a simulation, you're engaged, you're active, and we do get just rave reviews about that exact thing, that people enjoy doing it. That's made a big difference. And when we talk about attracting people to these careers, that's going to make a big difference, right? Like
Hmm.
I love showing people some of the HVAC, some younger folks HVAC, and talking to them about like pressures and temperatures and electrical, and it's like detective work. It's really stimulating work once they see that, but it's hard to see. With
Yeah.
the virtual world, you're like, I get it. Oh, now I'm taking a measurement, right? Like, and now I'm doing this, and that really activates what the job would look and feel like too. So I'm excited for that portion of it too.
Absolutely. And I won't name any other companies or whatnot, but I have seen some online learning platforms that, you know, they're almost too juvenile. They try to appeal to the younger generation, right? But they do that by using these little cartoon scientists with the funny glasses and and the beard and stuff like that, and they try to incorporate that into the
Yeah,
learning.
yeah, yeah,
And but look, I mean, kids these days, I mean, young people these days, they've grown up in the real world. They're past the point of cartoons explaining to them, what they should or shouldn't do. So it's even hard for companies like that to captivate the type of attention like you do with an entire immersive experience. So I'm very impressed by the platform, and I'm excited to continue to utilize it through the future. Um, so moving on, I'm curious. with the whole pandemic that's going on and COVID-19, have you seen any changes in how your platform is being utilized, or has it helped the industry in any way through COVID-19 that you've noticed?
Oh yeah, I mean materially. I mean we're moving along. The business was going quite well, and then February comes, March comes, COVID hits, and it frankly took off. It didn't go down. I mean, we're in distance learning, right? And just like the headlines say, we're all living on Zoom now. Digital transformations accelerated in all these business areas, and we're one of them. Learning's one of them. And so when you get forced downtime, which a lot of these companies could not put people, they didn't know, can we put someone in a house? I don't know, but I'm certainly not firing my staff. Well, what are we going to do for 2 weeks while we sort of sort this out? And so a lot of them turned to us and said, let's make that time productive. Let's use it. If everybody's trapped at home, let's use it for learning. So we've had a number of companies, both in HVAC and big multifamily facility maintenance programs, go all in on online learning. And so we not only saw that sort of burst of activity, and I think the usage was up like 400% over a couple weeks. It really was kind of crazy to see. Um, but it broke down some barriers, right? So people who said, well, maybe we're on the fence, all of a sudden they were kind of forced to say, yes, let's try it. And sure enough, a week or two later, they call back and say, we want 5 more seats, right? Because of what we just talked about, that once you can get them involved and looking at and using it and seeing how technicians react to it, it usually leads to really good things, which is good business for us. And so, yeah, it's definitely made a difference. That's continued even through today. And as you know, we don't know when this is all going to end. And so we feel that we're a yeah, we even did that really struggled. I mean, they called us and we said, just keep logging in. We're not going to cancel account, right? This is a tough time. Please keep training. Um, the one thing, we've talked about virtual reality a couple times, which is kind of the shiny object in what we do training wise, but most of the consumption is still just online, right? People don't have the hardware yet. It's growing. It was growing pretty good into March. That's been kind of sidelined during COVID for sure. But all because everything we do when we come simulation, you can consume it on any device. So it's that unfortunately has been sidelined because it really is a powerful piece of this puzzle. But but that's okay because I think we're people are appreciating the versatility and how accessible this is without that hardware.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can attest to that. I was one of those companies that had, his technicians in the boardroom, all on laptops and doing this and utilizing these simulations. And really, the VR portion of it is really captivating. I mean, that's what initially drew me to Interplay because I mean, how cool is that? You're right. That is, you know, that's just awesome. But then when you actually just work on the simulation part of it, it's still really cool. And honestly, the VR portion is something that I do eventually want to implement here because I think just the marketing aspect of it, the recruiting aspect of it, could be wildly beneficial.
Right?
But it really is the simulation that the true value is in, and my team understands that, and that the younger generation that I have working for me, are just as engaged with that, than I think they would be with VR. So very
Yep,
very
yep,
cool
that's
stuff.
right. It's definitely just like the hands-on has to be part of it, right? The portfolio of training has to, will include. Sometimes you're watching a video in the truck on your phone. Sometimes you're using a tablet doing a simulation or on a desktop, and then sometimes you're using it in VR, or we'll even at some point roll out an in the field app to make sure that you're doing the things that we know we can't teach right without the in the field stuff, and trying to make a complete training program, support customers that way too. So yeah, I think it's all a part of a better solution to get people job ready and advance their skills quicker, And so, yeah, it's exciting to be a part of.
Awesome. And so I'm curious, because just genuinely, this is how my thought process works. But I'm wondering what your plans are for the future. This technology, especially in this industry, can just, I mean, for lack of a better term, it can do some real damage in a good way, and I'm curious if you've got anything, if you're a serial entrepreneur, I know your gears are always turning. You don't shut those
Yeah.
things off. So, what are your plans for the future of Interplay?
Well, I mean, over cocktails, your head runs away. What could happen, et cetera. I really just try to stay focused now on, how do we serve this industry better? As a company, we're getting better listening to customers, right? As a young company, you start thinking, oh, well, let's build this, and so we're making sure we're listening, and the market's going to tell us what it needs. So we'll continue to expand domains, right? We continue to go deeper with HVAC, for HVAC in particular, adding a bunch more commercial stuff, right? So we'll launch in a couple weeks. I just put some pressure on my dev team. We'll launch a couple weeks with a big chiller simulation, which we haven't had yet. We have a rooftop one. I think it's like 12 tons, but um, we'll start doing some chiller stuff. Then you start doing some cooling tower. I mean, it's going to be fun to get into the commercial side of things and some bigger equipment. So we'll continue to expand the catalog. I mean, my hope is that in the HVAC industry, for example, it's the kind of learning that it's lifelong, right? There'll always be something new. And we work with the manufacturers, they roll out new technology. We're right there launching the training with that new technology, right? It's a new inverter. It behaves differently. We got to distribute that knowledge. How do we do that? Well, let's use Interplay system to do that, and that's the kind of thing we're doing with manufacturers. So, we hope that we're the go-to resource, dependable resource for everyday learning, whether it's just starting out or whether you're a 15-year vet. And we'll do that in HVAC, we'll do it in electrical, we'll do it in plumbing. We love the building trades, right? Because it goes back to that where we started this conversation. Just being part of it feels really rewarding, and being able to bring something novel that makes a big impact is also, there's a lot of reward in that.
Yeah, no, absolutely there is, and you don't need to confirm or deny the next remark that I'm going to make. But we're about to talk about the future of the skilled trades a little bit before we wrap this thing up. But what I would really love to see one day is an augmented reality piece to where there would be the next step from virtual reality to field work, something that was sitting right in front of your face via glasses or I don't know, contact lenses,
Yep,
if,
yep,
you know,
that's right.
and you're looking at a piece of equipment and this technology is telling you in your vision what to check and where. Now that,
That's right. Yeah, yeah, and we'll be part of that. So there is a continuum there of learning, right? Augmented reality, a term that people often use to describe what you're talking about, where you're in a real setting, versus virtual reality, where you occlude the world and you're in whatever setting that world we've created for you. Virtual reality, incredibly powerful, especially as you're learning, key techniques early on. Augmented reality is another way you could potentially learn. I actually find it's more distracting to learn in that. And I actually think the augmented reality is fantastic for efficiency. And so if you think about learning troubleshooting in a virtual environment, then you get in the field. If you could access that same diagnostic tree really easily, or you could get, all the other tools that allow you to pull information on that piece of equipment easily, but you've been trained well. Yeah, there's absolutely a continuum there that we want to be a part of. So yeah, I can say, you asked me not to confirm or deny, but there's no doubt a lot of our stuff, and we've designed it such that at the right time, for reference materials that we use for learning all the time, whether it's a diagnostic tree or reference, that code sits separate than the actual engine that drives the sims, and that's deliberate because at some point we may want to push that to a device in the field, and we'll be there. Goes back to focus we talked about earlier. I got to remind myself, kill a feature every day is the saying. You don't want to run away from, just keep building the next cool thing. Let's make sure we're getting what our focus is right, and then that will come. So yeah, that day is not too far.
That's cool, and I'm very, very excited to hear because that's what I'm looking forward to. So, on that same topic, then, what are the future of the skilled trades look like to you? That AR piece is in there, obviously, but what else, as far as this industry, do you see? How do you see it evolving?
Well, it's going to be fun, like I said, in 2021 when we start talking to more school age folks and see how they react to our technology representing the trades, and does it look like does it become a place in high schools and even middle schools where people get exposed to it sooner? As you see with the manufacturers, everything's getting more digital. Everything, the worlds are kind of they're advancing to the point that I think there's going to be some natural attraction, because it's not going to feel like old clunky equipment as much. It's going to feel like their TikTok account. But now they're dealing with reading pressure, right? And we see this with some of the apps today in the field where it's a little more dynamic. So I think as it digitizes a little bit, you have a really neat combo that you have digital stimulation around technology, and you have jobs that can't go away. They can't be outsourced. Someone's still got to get in the attic. Someone's still got to get in the crawl space. And so for a lot of people, that's going to be really attractive, right? A rewarding career that's never going to get put overseas. It's stimulating with this, the new technology coming on. So I don't think we're there yet, but I think the future's looking bright, because I do think the narrative has changed in this country. I think you have guys like, certainly like a Mike Rowe out there, trying to really pound the drum on, like, look, we gotta change the stigma sometimes around
Mhm.
these careers, and I can feel it shifting. I mean, you can see, especially with the pandemic, people kind of questioning, well, what am I doing? Am I doing something that's rewarding? And hopefully we can get people's attention at these in-demand jobs, right? If you have any skills right now, you knock on an HVAC company door, you're going to get hired on the spot, right? And meanwhile, we got 40 million people out of work. That's a pretty profound disconnect. And so if we can help bridge that, I think there are better days ahead.
Absolutely. I've never been more excited about the future than I am right now having this conversation. So thank you for that. And, you mentioned the skill trades are rewarding. They are. That's a big thing that I talk about a lot. And, the business that you're in, being trades adjacent and focused on serving the trades, I think is equally as important as being in the trades yourself. So I think that a viable career option for young people today could be a trades adjacent position that would also help this skilled trades gap that we're seeing. Again, I talk about the unlimited, unbelievable opportunities that the skilled trades present. And your company and you are a perfect example of that, because although you're not in the skilled trades turning the wrenches, you
Yeah.
are certainly very much involved in the skilled trades. And I think that that's a big, big thing in getting people to pay more attention to it. So before I let you go, I got one more question, real quick, that I ask everybody. But on a personal note, because you are involved with the skilled trades and you're a serial entrepreneur, uh, I like to ask everyone how they define success and how the skilled trades help them achieve that. So, how do you define success, Doug, and how are the skilled trades helping you in that?
Um, you know, it's a good question. So I've been a CEO now of this company for 10 years, and obviously had some other, entrepreneurial pursuits before, including that ski area when we had, 150 employees at different points. And for me personally, my success, I find a lot in creating opportunity for my team and my customers. Like, it's a joy for me when I get to promote somebody, and it's a joy for me when I get to promote somebody and I watch them flourish. And so for me, my personal success is around that team. How do we build a team that loves showing up every day? I try to bring a good light attitude to it, right? We're not, let's be honest, we're not curing cancer here, right? We're building software that, certainly will, hopefully we help people, but at the same time, let's not feel some stress that's probably, self-inflicted more than in reality. So we try to bring that in. And so for me, defining success is, survey my employees, or, our team, and they say the same thing. I love working for Interplay. I love how rewarding it is, both for me personally and professionally, but also what we're able to deliver to our customers. And if at the end of the day, that's what you hear back, I'll call this pretty successful, right? Like the outcomes are funny, right? Like what's the dream? Oh, we sell this company for $1 billion, right? Like, or is it, in the end, like when you look back, especially now, getting a little older, you start realizing the journey is, way more fun if you're not worried about that, like a financial outcome. And frankly, sometimes I play that scenario in my head and I'm like, well, what in my life would change if this was a big financial hit? And the reality is not very much, right? Like maybe I could afford pistachios because those are crazy expensive. But like other than that, like I don't see a dramatic difference in my life. So I've sort of realized that success for me has been around that day to day and helping both the team and our customer base.
Awesome answer. And of course, serving the skilled trades, is rewarding in itself. And I really respect that. You hold your team in such high regard, and I think that speaks volumes for you and your company.
Yeah, I mean they amaze me every day. I'll tell you this one little anecdote. We have this client prospect, and we wanted to blow them away because they're a big prospect. And so they said, oh, well, maybe we could build something like this. In the last 8 days, the team have thrown together a full working simulation on a really technical procedure out of nowhere. And just watching them, one, we have some technology that we've built through the years that allows for that, but watching them dive in, get passionate about it, from the art side to the procedure guide side, the technical side, it's been special to watch. And we're seeing that kind of thing all the time in the company. So that's the kind of thing that to me is the definition of success. Outcomes are outcomes, but the process and watching people participate at that level is really special.
Well, me and you are the same in that respect, Doug. I definitely value those same things with my team. Um, and yeah, I just I respect what you're doing, what Interplay is doing, and I appreciate all you're doing for the skilled trades. That being said, thank you so much for spending your valuable time talking to me
Yeah,
on
no
the
problem.
show.
And let me interrupt you. You
Yeah,
deserve the same, right? I mean, this podcast, we were talking offline, and the profile that both you've gotten, and just like we said, that the narrative's changing. Well, you're part of that, and so we deserve to say thanks to you if you don't hear it enough, because you're a big part of that.
I appreciate you saying that, Doug, very much. Thank you. And so before we wrap up, why don't you tell people where they can find Interplay, where they can find you, and we'll
Yeah,
be on our way.
sure. www.interplaylearning.com. My email, anyone can email me directly, ddonovan, DONOVAN, @interplaylearning.com. Yeah, we'd love to hear from any and all of you.
Awesome. Well, again, Doug, thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. Appreciate it.